Good day, everyone. So, we are the Group 1, and our topic for today is about the human trafficking and human rights in migration. So, before we begin, this is for educational use only. So, our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material. So, human trafficking is the illegal trade of humans for the purpose of forced labor, sexual slavery, or commercial sexual exploitation. So, it's a serious violation of human rights and often involves deception, coercion, or abduction to exploit victims. So, human trafficking is a complex and insidious crime that involves the exploitation of individuals through force, fraud, or coercion. And it encompasses various forms, including forced labor, sexual exploitation, and domestic servitude and organ trafficking. So, victims of human trafficking are often lured or coerced into situations where they are exploited for profit. So next is the one of the most alarming aspects of human trafficking is its prevalence worldwide. It occurs in virtually every country, so both as a source and destination for victims. So vulnerable populations such as migrants, refugees, runaway youth, and marginalized communities are particularly at risk. So, traffickers use various methods to control and manipulate their victims, including physical violence, psychological abuse, death bondage, and threats against their families. So, victims may be isolated from their support networks and subjected to living conditions that are degrading and inhumane. So, efforts to combat human trafficking involve a multifaceted approach, including legislation, law enforcement, victim support services, public awareness campaigns, and international cooperation. So, identifying the prosecuting traffickers, protecting and supporting victims, and addressing the root cause of trafficking are all crucial components of anti-trafficking efforts. So, despite of ongoing efforts, human trafficking remains a pervasive and challenging problem, requiring continued vigilance and collaboration at local, national, and international levels to combat effectively. So that's all.
So, good afternoon, sir. So, my topic is all about the examples of human trafficking. So, human trafficking involves the exploitation of individuals through force, fraud, or coercion for various purposes. So, here are a few examples of human trafficking. So, number one is sex trafficking. This form of trafficking involves the recruitment, transportation, or harboring individuals for the purpose of sex exploitation. Victims, often women and children, are forced into prostitution, pornography, or other form of sexual servitude. So, next example is labor trafficking. So, labor trafficking involves the exploitation of individuals through force or coercion for labor services. Victims may be forced to work in industries such as agriculture, construction, domestic work, manufacturing, or sweatshops under deplorable conditions with little or no pay. Next is child trafficking. So, child trafficking are particularly vulnerable to trafficking. They may be sold, kidnapped, or coerced into forced labor, child soldiering, child marriage, or sexual exploitation. Traffickers exploit their vulnerability and manipulate them for financial gain. So, last example is organ trafficking. Organ trafficking. This form of trafficking involves the illegal trade of organs, where individuals are forcibly or fraudulently made up to give up their organs for transplantation. Victims may be kidnapped, deceived, or coerced into undergoing surgeries to extract their organs. So, it is important to note that these are just a few examples, and human trafficking can take various other forms depending on the region and the circumstances. The underlying factor in all forms of trafficking is the exploitation and violation of human rights, with traffickers profiting from the suffering of their victims.
So, hello everyone, I Kadit Saison, and my topic is what are the three elements of human trafficking. So the first is acts, and number two is means, and number three is purpose. So what is the meaning of the acts? So the acts elements of forced labor is met when trafficker recruits, harbor, transports, and provides or obtains a person for labor or service. So it means that the trafficker at human trafficking is they recruit an group of a member to so that they can do the human trafficking. And the second is a means, and the means element of forced labor includes a trafficker used to force, fraud, or coercion. The corrective shame can include threats of force, debt manipulation, withholding of pay, and confiscation of identity documents, and psychological coercion. And the last is reputational harm, and manipulation of the use of addictive substance treats to other people or other forms of coercion. So the last part is the purpose elements. So the purpose elements is that focus on the perpetrator's goals to exploit a person's labor or service. Just like there is no limit on the location or type of industry that the traffickers can commit to the crime in any sector or settings, whether legal or illegal, including but not limited to agricultural field, factories, restaurants, hotel, massage parlors, retail stores, and fishing bills, and mines, private homes, or drug trafficking operations. All three elements are essential to constitute the crime of forced labor. There are certain types of forced labor that are frequently distinguished or emphasized, or because they are widespread. So that's all.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my topic is human trafficking in the Philippines. So human trafficking in the Philippines is a multi-phase issue that involves various forms, including sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and child exploitation. Despite efforts by the government and civil society organizations to combat it, challenges persist due to factors such as poverty, lack of awareness, corruption, and the clandestine nature of trafficking networks. Based from the Philippines News Agency on March 2024, the Philippines has implemented 4 effective strategies to combat trafficking in women and girls, as outlined during a side event of the 68th Annual Commission on the Status of Women. These strategies include adopting a holistic approach that considers multiple identities and specific contexts, implementing community-based strategies in close coordination with women's organizations, championing survivor-centered approaches, and fostering domestic and regional collaborations to support survivors. These efforts highlight the importance of partnerships, survivor empowerment, and tailored responses to address the complex issue of human trafficking, particularly its impact on women and girls who constitute roughly 60% of trafficking victims according to United Nations.
Trafficking to immigration. Human trafficking intersects with the immigration as a vulnerable migrants seeking better opportunities or feeling hardship fall prey to traffickers promising assistance, exploited in transit, or upon arrival they endured forced labor, sexual employment, traffickers, employment purpose, borders, and lacks of enforcement. Then, using immigration routes for transport, trafficking thrives in sectors where migrants seek works, subjecting them doubt, debt, bondage, or consortium, lack of legal protection of migrants, liabilities, vulnerability, hindering resource, addressing trafficking necessitates comprehensive measure, including enhancing borders control, legal protection, tackling root cause of migration, and foster international cooperation to dismantle trafficking networks. While human trafficking and migration are distinct phenomena, they are often intertwined with migration, increasing the vulnerability of individuals to trafficking and traffickers, exploiting migration routes conditions for their illegal activities. Addressing trafficking effectively requires understanding and addressing the complex the dynamic between migration and trafficking. Migration can also increase vulnerability to sex trafficking, particularly among women and children. Migrants may be lured into trafficking situation with false promise and legitimate employment of marriage opportunities, only be forced into prostitution or other forms of sexual exploitation.
Good day, everyone. My name is Injay David Cortez. My topic was all about understanding human rights in migration. We have a dignity and equality, protection from exploitation and abuse, family unity, assist to the service, and assist justice due to process. So, understanding human in migration is essential for ensuring the dignity, safety, and well-being of migrants. It's involved recognizing that migrants, regardless of their status, possess fundamental rights that must be upheld. These rights include the right to life, liberty, and security of person, the right to seek asylum from persecution, protection from discrimination, access to healthcare and education, and fair treatment under the law. So, government and societies must respect and protect this right to create a more just and compassionate approach to migration. So that's all for today.
So good day everyone. So my topic is talk about the adverse effect of human trafficking to globalization. So human trafficking inflicts significant harm on globalization by violating human rights, perpetuating labor exploitation, so disrupting labor markets and fostering social instability and diminishing human capital, and also posing legal and regulatory challenges. So it undermines the ethical foundation essential for sustainable globalization by exploiting vulnerable populations for cheap or unpaid labor, so thereby distorting fair competition in the global economy. So this exploitation leads to economic disparities, and social unrest and reduce human potential, and also hindering the development of stable societies capable of effective participation in global system. So additionally, combating trafficking requires international cooperation, presenting challenges due to difference in legal frameworks and enforcement the capabilities across countries, further complicating efforts to establish constant and regulatory standards necessary for ethical globalization. So there are six significance of trafficking globalization. So the first, human rights violations. So human trafficking violates the fundamental principles of human rights, which are essential for the ethical and sustainable functioning of globalized system. So the second is labor exploitation. So labor exploitation is traffic. Individuals are often exploited for cheap or even unpaid labor. So undercutting fair labor practices, or this can create an uneven playing field in the global economy, as companies engaging in trafficking gain an unfair advantage over those that adhere to ethical labor standards. So the third is economic disruption. So economic disruption is trafficking can disrupt labor markets by flooding them with underpaid or unskilled workers. And four is social cost. So the social cost, trafficking fuels social instability and undermines trust within communities. This can hinder the development of stable societies necessary for effective participation in the global economy. And fifth is diminished human capital. So diminished human capital is trafficking deprives individuals of the opportunity to contribute meaningfully to society and the global economy. And the last is the legal and regulatory challenges. So combating trafficking requires international cooperation or coordination, which can be challenging due to differences in legal system and enforcement capabilities across countries. And also, thank you.
Hello everyone, we'll tackle about the human trafficking to globalization. Human trafficking undermines globalization is exploiting vulnerable population, fueling isolated economies, and perpetuating inequalities. It distorts labor markets, that undermines human rights, and erodes trust in global system. Additionally, it tarnishes of reputation of countries involved and impedes international cooperation and development efforts. Human trafficking indeed has adverse effects on globalization. It perpetuates inequality, undermines labor standards, and fuels corruption, all of which can impede the progress of globalization efforts. The adverse effect of human trafficking is associated with human trafficking. Psychological consequences include depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other anxiety disorder, thoughts of suicide, and somatic condition including disabling, physical pain, or dysfunction.